this time round, we're going to be talking New Blood. Oh God, New Blood is going to be talking about content, and we're going to be focusing on content. And I'm really pleased to say that we've got a bunch of content writers and great writers here, so we should have plenty of things to talk about. If you want to ask questions, if you're in the Zoom call, then please do chat and ask questions in the Zoom call, and I can see that. I can probably see the questions in the Facebook group, but hopefully David's going to have a look at those and pull those up, because I'm a little disorganized at that sort of thing. Obviously, this wouldn't happen without our sponsor, Majestic, so thank you very much to Majestic for coming on and sponsoring these events and these webinars. If you haven't tried their new product, Majestic Monitor, we're actually talking about it at a paid social event, which is a Brighton SEO sponsored event, or put on by Brighton SEO in a couple of days. So have a look at that, and there's a demonstration of Majestic SEO and particularly Majestic Monitor, and hopefully that'll sort of highlight interesting ways of finding influencers and using the flow metrics that Majestic has to find influencers. It's a separate product to the main Majestic product, so have a look at that. Okay, guys, so I'm going to start by asking the panelists to introduce themselves. Hopefully you know a little bit about them, but I'll let you guys talk about yourselves and your experience in writing and content. And Miranda, you're up on my screen as the first person to go. So why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us about yourself and who you are.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me today, Dixon.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming on. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Miranda Miller from miranda-miller.com. I have been a writer, editor, and content marketer for 15 years now, so I think I might be the old guard on this call. Formerly the editor of Search Engine Watch.
You and me are the old guard, by the way. I can just so you know. I'm still.
Not that we're aging
really
ourselves,
old.
but
no. But you know, there we go. Thank you for volunteering.
Yes. Yeah, so today I have a small creative agency, and we help brands with their publishing operations, getting started and running them as well.
Okay, that's great. And you're on. You're writing on Search Engine. Which one?
Search Engine Journal.
Journal. Yeah.
Yes.
You've got to get the right one. You can't say the wrong one on the wrong thing. You know. So yeah, I've seen some posts over there, and there's some great stuff over there. Rebekah, who are you, and where do you come from?
Hi, I'm Rebekah.
Say in one of the shows in the UK. So you know, who are you and where do you come from?
So I come from a little town called the Black Country. It's quite literally halfway between Birmingham and Wolverhampton, so I belong to neither. I'm what you call a yam yam, and I have 5 years experience in digital marketing and writing. So I feel like that might hopefully make me a young blood, even though I don't always feel it.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. You are. Yeah.
Yeah, I started out as a content writer, then I explored SEO, PPC, social media, realized that I still love content and went back to it. That's what I do at Sweet Digital. I've just finished NaNoWriMo, which is writing a whole novel in a month. And it was really, really tough, but I did it.
Well you did done. What? Say that again? Sorry, what did I miss?
It's called the NaNoWriMo Challenge, and you have to write an entire book in a month.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I did it 2 years ago, and I'm just editing that book now. And I took a break from that to do it this time around.
Okay.
And I forgot how hard it was and how tiring.
That is major. I've tried 3 times and have never finished one. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
Okay, and we got Jason Darrell jumping in there saying, "Hey, I'm from Tipton. Go Yam Yams." So
yes,
you have a friend in the audience. So
wonderful.
And David's asking me if I can see myself streaming on Facebook. I can, but I can't give you a link because it's just my Facebook stream. So I don't know. Shaun, who are you and where do you come from, sir?
I mean, originally I'm from a lovely little place called Bury St Edmunds, but currently I've just recently moved out of London and I'm now living in Portsmouth. So yeah, by the coast. So COVID's been a strange time, and it's been a time of reflection for me. So got myself out of London and now living by the seaside, so 10 minutes away. And I'm head of content at iProspect in the London team. But I previously worked at Greenlight Digital, and that's kind of where I first sort of got involved with SEO. But before that, I was training to become a journalist, and I realized that getting into journalism was super difficult, particularly as I wanted to be a music journalist. And it appeared that most music publications were either going out of business or they were cutting staff. So I actually wrote my dissertation on why the NME should go completely free. And then I sent it to them when I finished my MA. And then about 2 years later, they did go free. So I'd like to claim that that's because of that dissertation I wrote on that topic. But I think it's more because advertising sales were probably something that they were going after at that point.
Okay, interesting. I know Warren from Greenlight fairly well. I did a bit back in the day. I'm more tech side now. So yeah, okay, that's great.
He's a good guy, and I remember I used to sit near him. So
him and I go back a long way. There's early days, definitely on the old guard on that one with Warren. Okay, guys. So I wanted to start with my first question for each of you, just in case people don't have the time to go through all 45 minutes or they want to make sure that they're going to get something out of here. Content is a topic of the day. What's if they don't listen to anything else, what's the one tip that you can give to people about content that we can get right at the top of the show? And I'll tell you what, Shaun, you're on my screen again, so I'll start with you. So if you're going to have one tip that people can take away about content, what's it going to be?
So it's like a super difficult question to start the session, but
I know, because I'm a nasty kind of presenter. Really,
No,
and then I'm going to come back and argue your points later on if I keep myself organised.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I guess for me, it's something that we were doing when I was at Greenlight sort of 5 or 6 years ago, and I don't think this has gone away. But it's really trying to understand who the audience is, and I think that's somewhat changed in SEO quite a lot over time. So big period of time of my time working on some clients, I guess we were looking at a lot of seasonality and peaks of sort of keywords, but we tend not to look at that as much anymore. And I think it's actually really important to understand who your audience is and what they're asking. So obviously Google helps us with that, with things like PWAs and sort of PAs, and feature snippets, but actually looking at things like Trustpilot and people's reviews on Google and other platforms actually gives us an insight into what people are asking. I think second to that is working with so my side, obviously I'm agency side, so I work with the brands. The relationship that we have there is very much trying to find out exactly what sort of queries and questions the customer service team might get or the sales team might get, because understanding what people are asking of those teams can help us write the right type of content and the type of content that people want. And I think that's kind of the thing I would always sort of try to work with my teams on. And I think the best article we've ever done in my time at iProspect, just to give a quick shout out to the team that worked on this, was for a shower brand. And the article is a step-by-step guide on how to remove mold from your shower head. And it is still, to this time, my 5 years of working on that brand, the best performing page that other than the homepage, it's the best performing page. And it's because it literally gives you step by step on that specific topic, which is such a problem for people. And I know that removing mold from a shower head is a problem because I've currently got the problem. So I need to probably go and read that article again and follow those steps.
Okay, guys, panelists, so I've just put the link to the live Facebook thing in the chat. So if you have an opportunity to pop it on your Facebook feeds or somewhere, then that would be great. But that's fine. And Miranda, tell us about your one tip for us.
Yes, I think Shaun touched on. I agree with everything he said, and I think what he started alluding at there is that you have to treat it like a publishing business. So a publishing operation, if content is just whoever has some spare time on a Thursday afternoon, or the interns writing it, or it's just a chore, it's an extra task, it's going to be really difficult to meet your goals, and it's going to be hard for readers to appreciate that. So it is, the reason that journalists transition so well into content marketing is because the principles of publishing and storytelling are the same. That has not changed. So who the publishers are has changed. Brands or publishers now, there's not a lot of money left in traditional publishing. If you're trying to get a job as a magazine writer, that's going to be really difficult for you. But I think treating it as a proper publishing organization and making sure you have the resources to do that properly, set yourself up for success so you're not wasting your time.
I might come back to that, I think. But before I do, Rebekah, why don't you jump in and tell us your one tip you're going to give to people about, how to write content or how to do content, approach content.
Yeah. Well, first, congratulations, Shaun, on your showerhead piece. That's amazing that it's doing so well still. It's awesome. I think my piece of advice is something that I've been thinking about a lot recently. And and it's to sort of try and disconnect the idea that content belongs in SEO. It's sort of an aid to help SEO, but it's not there purely for SEO. So I have a history in SEO as well, but I still work closely with my SEO colleagues because I'm writing for interest and for the audience, and the SEO will help that, but it's not all one whole thing. It's loads of different things coming together, and I think a lot of the time people assume that content is just part of SEO, and it's not. It's so much bigger than that.
Sorry, this is me. I've just messed up the system. I've just put you on the Facebook Live thing, and I don't know. Oh, I'm doing a wonderful job today. It's great, superb. Okay, we're definitely live now because I can see you on two screens. So thank goodness I'm going to have a producer for next month to make this all better. So that's good. Okay, guys. Right, I wanted to start off with a question that is something that kind of is important to me, I think. You guys have sort of talked about treat it as a publishing business and, understand your audience and those kind of things. But for most of us, we don't have that kind of resources. We've just got to be exactly what Miranda says we shouldn't be, which is the guy that, wakes up on Thursday afternoon and says, I've got to do a blog post before the end of the week. So we can come back to why that's a bad state of mind, bad state of affairs, where you need some more resource and stuff, and feel free to punch your angles, and I'm happy to do that. But I do want to ask, because there's, most of the audience are SEOs, is it better on the internet to write short, punchy content that you can understand quickly, or is it better to write in-depth content? Because to me, well, I've got an opinion, and I could go both ways. But I'm interested for you guys, from an SEO perspective, short and punchy, or in depth and wordy. Who wants to go first?
I'm happy to jump in. Sure. I think the thing is, I know it's like a cliche people say, but like, don't write for the sake of writing. So if like someone's query is, what is the time in New York right now? You don't need to answer that in 500 words. That can be answered pretty instantly. If the question is how do different time zones work across the world and how are they developed, then that needs a larger response. Like, that's a really niche article, I imagine, but I'm sure it exists on the internet. I think that's one of those things that it's obviously something in the industry that you see these sort of graphs and these stats that if you write over 1,000 words, you're more likely to rank, etc., etc. But sometimes like the query and the intent of the query doesn't require 1,000 words, so therefore don't write 1,000 words. But in some instances, how to apply for a mortgage, or how to, I'm on a bit of a mold mission at the moment, but how to remove mold from my bedroom, like that's maybe going to require a bit more detail about like the actual the doing of it, and it might require video content and it might require images to show people exactly what needs to be done. But if the question is simple, don't overcomplicate the answer.
Okay, Rebekah, or do you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. I always tend to do a little bit of both because personally, I'm what I call a lazy looker. So when I read blog posts and things, I read the headlines first, and then if I want more information, I go deeper. So I try to do both. I try to do really punchy headings in more in-depth content, and then I try to summarize as much as I can as well, just so that person who's really leisurely, they can take their time to read it. Someone who's in a rush, they can just get the main points and go. And I find that works quite well.
Okay. Miranda, anything to add?
Yeah,
I think you'd agree with those kinds of points.
I think they both have their purpose, and it's critically important that you understand the purpose of each piece and that it's published in the right format. So that short, punchy, FAQ style content, that can be great for helping you achieve position 0 or for voice search, that kind of thing. And then you need to understand, okay, what option am I giving them to go deeper? So when we did, I did content for Cork Expeditions, which is like big ticket luxury travel. And we had 4 very distinct buyer personas. And it's important that you understand, like, what is that person looking for next? We had people who would digest like 50 pieces of content before they would book because it's a $25,000 trip, right? Wow. And there are some types of buyers who really want to know every single detail. They want to know, like, what am I going to be doing every day? Who is leading me? What are their qualifications? And then there's other people who just want to know what kind of experience they're going to have. Am I going to have good Instagram shots? So understanding who you're writing for and where that piece of content fits in the customer journey is super important.
So a slight aside there is my wife, she'd need content for after she's booked, actually, because she loves booking in January for the summer holiday kind of stuff, and then it's all about the waiting in between, which is another persona, I guess. But okay, so I get it, right? So the BBC has this thing where they say, well, you've got to get 5 of your points in the first sentence or something like that on a BBC News article and stuff. But I then worry about how much we're wasting our lives on writing content that no one's ever going to read, and that's my concern about writing long form content. I can see how it gives a lot more context to a search engine that's trying to find the meaning the underlying meaning for it, but I can also see that there's a huge amount of writing that doesn't get read by very many people. Even they'll read the headlines, and well, Rebekah, you said the lazy looker, and I think as SEOs, we're probably all guilty of not reading. If I put something out on Twitter and ask people to look at it, I get likes well before anybody could possibly have read the content. So, so I do worry about that. And then I sit there and think, well, I suppose we're doing it for the search engines then, but I've got to do it for more than the search engines. Surely we've got to take some pride in our in what we're doing. So that brings me on to the second question, really, is, how long do you, as people that are basically are paid to think about these things and write about these things and come up with a strategy, not just necessarily a sort of an idea for a post. How long do you usually spend writing a post or writing what happens? Would a customer come in and say, I want a piece on this, and then you kind of come up with a whole structure and things? How long does that take? And again, you're on the screen, Miranda, it's on my screen. So why don't you go first?
I mean, it really varies. I think the best content comes from inside the company, even when you're working as a contractor. So, and this again goes back to journalism, the ability to interview people and to extract that knowledge and turn that into the story and the content and the format that people are going to be engaged with. So, I mean, it can be, 4 to 6 hours. There's a lot of planning that goes into it. And then usually I'll have one of my writers do it, and then we edit it, and then it's optimized, and then it's out there. But I think the more important thing is what you do with it later. So how is it being promoted? And if you've spent that time creating a really solid piece of content, you can come back to it 1 year, 2 years, 5 years from now and keep updating it. Make sure that your calls to action are sending people to the most relevant offers or landing pages. Don't just let it sit there and rot. Keep it. It's a living, breathing piece of your organization. So keep it up to date.
Okay. And am I still talking, or am I gone on to silent mode? It says I'm on mute.
I can hear you.
Oh, that's fine. Okay. There we go. This is just going weird, this one now. Okay. Rebekah, do you have anything you want to jump in there? So how long do you spend on a piece of content? What goes into that?
I mean, yeah, it super varies. I actually did a poll on this on Twitter, and obviously got the usual Twitter responses from a fair few people.
Yeah, mostly saying it depends. Yeah, okay.
No, but one person told me it took him a week, and I was like, I really don't quite. I mean, if that's true, like 5 whole days of solid 8 hours a day, then I'm not sure. I think you're kind of trying to mess with my results there a little bit.
Well, this from a person that can write a book in a month, so
Well, but is it any good? Yeah, so I mean, I've got, for example, so if I'm doing I do guides monthly for their clients. That can take me anything between 6 and 9 hours. Blog posts, sometimes it's 3 or 4. If it's a brand that I really know and I really like, it's a lot quicker, especially when I've had time to get to know them a lot more. Okay. And I suppose as well, it depends on how the writer's feeling at the time. That really has a massive impact. And I think people don't put enough thought into that. I wrote a piece the other day and it really got to me, and I'm not gonna lie, I cried a little bit because it was about care at home, and it was just a really lovely piece, if I do say so myself. And that kind of put me out for a little while, and I had to sort of take a break. And I think how you feel affects how long it takes you to write something.
I think that's very interesting. It's probably the difference between a professional writer and somebody who just tries to knock out on a Thursday probably comes out in the writing. So, yeah. Shaun, can you speak? typically spend a whole day on a piece of content?
No, not at all. I think like recently I wrote a piece and it took me half an hour, but I had a lot of like information from the team. So I think that what I was going to say, and sort of add to what Rebekah and Miranda have said, is around if you know the brand and if you know like the topic very well, I think it's obviously like something that's quite quicker. If you work in an agency, you know, often that you're working with like lots of brands. So Katie in my team, if she's listening, shout out to her. She writes on lots of work. She sometimes has to write about finance and she has to write about fitness, and then she has to write about dog care, and then she has to write about beauty. And it's like, it's trying to get your head into sort of like the different products and maybe the different audiences. So I think actually if you know the brand really well, and we've personally found that if you put people onto certain brands or certain topics, they can get to know that brand a lot more. And I think actually from an agency point of view, I've found a lot of brands that we work with are specifically looking for us to provide people with expert like knowledge in that particular sector. So whether that's finance or automotive, actually having someone that knows a sector will probably, I'm probably generalizing a bit, but it will reduce the time. Mm-hmm. I think that in terms of how you work, and
probably increase the quality a little bit as well. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. I think it's, you know, the more that you get to know, you know, the brand and the tone of voice and the audience, then I think that the better the content will be. Mm-hmm. I think you can sometimes spot when someone is, you know, I guess trying to use Google and use Wikipedia to fuel like their content, and they don't quite know the topic. So you can get away with that on sort of like what I call fluffier content, which is, you know, like quite easy to listen to, read and stuff. But if it's serious content that you're talking about and you're actually talking about topics that affect people's lives and their day to day, then you do need someone that knows what they're doing or has enough time to research. So I think sometimes actually what we find is the research, the insight stuff takes longer than the actual writing. Once you've got all the information that you need, you know the brand, you know the subject matter, you know the audience, you're sort of just piecing it together. So I think a lot of the time, and it probably maybe it's just the way that we operate, that we do a lot of like upfront work before we brief the writer. But then I think Rebekah mentioned it, and I think it's a really important point to say that once you get sort of into the realm of writing, you're in like a groove and you start writing. What I find, and maybe it's just, you know, time of year, meetings come into your diary, they disrupt what you're writing. Yes, you're in the middle of something, but then going back to that piece, you're like, right, what was I writing about again? And it takes you a bit of time to get back in. So what we try and do with Katie is block out time where she's writing and then joining a brainstorm with us or joining a meeting, just to make sure that people have blocked out bits of time dedicated to writing.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I think that point's interesting, and in the chat as well. You know, Jason says, you know, visitors are going to recognize authority in the content, and I think that also plays a little bit probably to Google as well. If Google can recognize the author, then that may have some kind of impact on things as well. But going to that idea of writing content that you're not really, you know, an expert in. I've got a question from an attendee who says, can you give me any ideas on content related to the roofing industry? I don't feel like people would care enough about the roofing industry. So I think that's a good example to bring in then, because it's the sort of thing you guys probably end up facing on a regular basis. You know, the roofing industry, they've got a roofing website, they want some content, they want to give something that's going to be, you know, meaningful, hopefully, and content rich. What would you do? How would you answer that question?
I'll go here.
Yeah,
and I think Miranda. Looking from the perspective of the person who is the authority. So if you don't have a team, you know, you're not in a brand, you're not in an agency, you're a sole proprietor, maybe. This is where it's super important to figure out what works for you and what resources are available to you. So I have people who will send me voice notes, and then we either use something like otter.ai, which is just a AI transcriptionist, or send it to a VA and have it transcribed really quickly. They might, you know, just jump on a Zoom call for 10 minutes and explain what's on their mind. Like, hey, I have this idea. Here's how I feel about it. And that, again, when you're working with someone who has the ability to interview and sort of help you flesh out that idea, it's so much more valuable to use those resources than to spend 8 hours kicking yourself like, oh, why can't I write this? Because not everyone's a writer.
That's great. So what you're saying is, as a writer, what you end up doing is just getting the expert in the room and on a Zoom call, record the call and turn it into the content.
Right. It's a matter of figuring out how to extract that expertise from that person who is the expert, and then you know, how can you polish that up for them?
Okay, that's a good tip. That's a good suggestion. Okay, anyone else want to jump in with roofing ideas for our guest?
I'd take it from the. I mean, I'm assuming that it's a person. The website is someone that's trying to sell roofing services rather than.
Yeah, I'm guessing that it's a roofing person with their own roofing website and their own roofing company, and they're not naturally a writer, and they don't naturally have the resources to go and buy writers because they're roofing. So they kind of want the inspiration from us as content writers.
Yeah, I mean, I would hop on things like the safety aspects. So falls from height, I know from other stuff that I've done, is a massive issue. And that's something, how are they making sure that people that are doing the job up there are being safe? For example, is the environmental aspects of it, asbestos. There's loads of things that people that are having a new roof will care about or may not even know about, what they should be aware of. And I think, sorry, that's my cat. I think don't be afraid to sort of stray away a little bit from your service to educate and to interact with your readers, because that's going to not only build their trust in you and show that you know what you're talking about, it's also going to show that you care. It's going to build up a little bit of loyalty.
Yeah. Okay. Shaun, any other tips or ideas for that as a typical subject?
Yeah, roofing, not loads that I know about. Only that, probably got loads of problems with my own roof. But who's looking at their roof, right? You're just like, it'll be fine. Like, unless it falls down, then there's no issues. I think it sounds really like something that you would maybe do at school, or I know we do this a lot, where effectively, if you've got roofing as the topic and you sort of put that in the center. No, you don't have to be a writer to be able to sort of work out what the related topics might be. And I know it sounds quite simple just to have piece of paper, the topic in the middle, and start thinking about what is it that are related topics to that. So weather would be related, because the weather will affect your roof. So you can start sort of stranding out the types of content just from knowing the product. And a roofer will know roofing content more than I will. So they'll be able to come to the ideas in terms of what is related to that topic. They'll know if they're in the industry, they're actually, a roofer themselves, they'll know what the key topics are. So whilst that won't help them necessarily write the actual content, it will definitely help sort of the inspiration of the types of content that would need to be created. And then I guess in regards to sort of the creation, it's a case of I know it sounds easy me sitting here saying this, but give it a go, I guess. Just try it, run it past someone that you know that is maybe good at sub editing. A couple of my friends are just from uni days. I remember that they were really good with good with words. So, if it was me, I'd probably just, there's a cat appeared on the screen, which is just made me laugh a lot.
So if in doubt, just write about cat on the roof. That's
cat on the roof. That's got to be a big topic, surely. Cats, Santa Claus on the roof. That's got to be a big one. Surely,
that's topical as well. Absolutely. Problems of Santa getting down the chimney. Yeah, it's from a roofer's perspective. Absolutely brilliant. Good ideas, actually. Molly's got a bunch in the chat as well. Beautiful views from the roof. We take the risk so you don't have to. We make one of the ways to appear to the roof look like you spent 1 million without having to spend to do that. So close to do that. So a bunch of ideas in the chat there. And one thing I'll just add there is, when it comes to ideas, is things like Google Suggest or Answer the Public or question finder tools. Try and find the questions that people are asking on the internet, and that'll give you a place to start. Because if you're answering something that somebody's already asking, Quora is a good place to look and see what questions are on there on roofing. Be wary though, because a lot of those are, the roofer has asked the question and answered the question, and actually they're the only person that's reading their own stuff. So you want to try and find the stuff that is useful. I mean, we've got another one from Himadri, who's said, for a company that writes about the stock market, how do you make your content creative but still stay relevant? So rather than focusing, we can talk a little bit about the stock market, but being creative and still staying relevant. Miranda, you talked about content that could be evergreen, that could be changed and can be updated. Is there any ideas that we can give them in the stock market? Before I'm not going to go in through industry, but I'll take another one because the question came in. We got some ideas on how we can keep creativity in sort of stock market stuff, because there's a lot of customers that are in the finance kind of sector.
Sure. And this works for roofing, and it works for, I have another friend who has started doing digital marketing for an adult incontinence brand. And I was like, really? I never, what do you write about? And he said, actually, think about what people are going through, right? And that's the basis of every good piece of content.
It's fine. You can call it tenor. We know what it is. It's all right. I'm that age.
Like, yeah, people don't want to hear you talk about yourself. They don't want to read the brand talking about me all the time. And so if you're approaching it from a perspective of, you know, what matters to this person who's going to be reading this? Who cares? What do they need to know? You know, what matters to them? So in the case of the roof, it could be, I'm about to spend $10,000. And as someone who has shingles flying off my roof every time it's windy right now, you know, that's a pain point. So you could educate people and help them understand, like, different roofing techniques. Do they actually matter? You could do a lead generator buyer's guide. What should I be asking my roofing contractor? You can do these sort of things for the stock market too. Like, what's my biggest fear is that I'm going to lose my money in the stock market. So what practical tips can you share? You know, get creative around that. Are there different sources I should be looking at? Is there, you know, it's the stock market's tricky because you don't want to give advice like you're telling people what picks to make, because that's going to get you in a lot of trouble. But help people understand how they can, you know, get started safely and what they should be looking for, you know, how much growth is normal and these kinds of things.
Jason puts in the chat as well, you know, understand the pain points, which is a similar sort of thing to what you're saying, you know, trying to find the audience's pain points and make that better for it, to solve a problem for them, you know. Okay, Rebekah, Shaun, anything you want to add in there? That'll be a no. Well, if you do, then you've got to go off mute.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do. I did a whole presentation the other month on mute, and Ouch. It was horrific. Yeah, it was really embarrassing. And then I tried to do it again, and I didn't share the screen, and it was really
Well, that makes my cock-ups at the start of this look like I'm a pro. That's great.
Yeah, I laugh now, but at the time I had to drink a lot afterwards.
Yes. Okay. Anyway, stock market ideas or creative ideas or whatever. Yeah.
I can only think of one, because the stock market, I don't even really know what it is. But thinking of what I would like to read, because I don't know what it is if I were to get involved and I was to invest money, then what I would really like is, if there's a situation that's predicted to happen or is potentially happening, I would love to know other occasions when this has happened and who came out the winner and who came out the loser, for example, just little case studies. I think personally would be really interesting. As someone that knows nothing about the stock market, I don't know if that's actually interesting, but that's my two cents.
I quite like that. What I would say is, of course, it's a regulated industry. So some of the things that we may say here, we're not qualified to answer you, Hamadri, because in the UK, it's a regulated industry. But the things that I look at are, you know, I do look at, you know, tips and ideas and things. And I love that idea, Rebekah, especially if you can find some parallel data source to bring into a conversation. And the idea of saying, you know what, pandemics, they've happened before. This is what's happened to the stock market before. You know, these are things you can sit there and give people some data, because I think in the stock market, people invest emotionally, but they think they're trying to invest rationally. So if you can actually give them some rational ideas and thought process, you're probably doing them a favor. So. Shaun, do you want to add anything, or shall I just jump on?
Yeah, the only thing I was going to say is that I think when you're in a sector which is regulated, which, you know, finance, stocks, like insurance, I think it's sometimes just like really useful to think about who's like an aspirational or like a brand that is doing really well in that space. So there's a number of sort of like brands that have launched over the last couple of years in the sort of finance insurance space, the sort of disruptors in that industry. So I sometimes it's quite fun to look at what they're doing. So Habito is like one of those. I'm not sure if you've seen their adverts, but they go mad with sort of like some of their imagery, and some of their assets are really great. So sometimes just like, I know it sounds like quite simple, but just sort of having a look at what competitors are doing can sometimes provide inspiration to you yourself as a brand. But yeah, I mean, stocks and shares as a heavily regulated industry. So whilst in my head, I'm thinking, right, okay, what things can we do? Fictional TV shows that like have like, you know, they've got like billionaires in it, like, but realistically those ideas sometimes get sort of panned off because of like, you know, compliance and stuff. But yeah.
Okay. Okay, I want to move to a slightly different tack now. Darren's asked, and I think it's a good question to go into. What's the most effective way to promote your content or blog posts that you've written? Because sometimes it's not about the content itself; it's what you do after that content. You know, how do you make sure that what you say, you know, however meaningful it is, doesn't fall on deaf ears? Who wants to jump in on that one?
Happy to go on that one. I think this is one that I feel quite sort of like quite passionate about, but I think that a lot of like content creation does end up stopping at the point of sort of publishing, because I think that like there's not enough hours or enough resource or budget into the actual promotion of it. But I think that the best sort of content that I've been involved with in terms of myself professionally in my career have been content pieces where other channels have got behind. So whether that be email, whether that be paid. In one instance, I worked with a high street retailer where we did a piece of content and we actually put it into the store itself, and that meant that like more people were seeing it. That was very lucky in that instance that the client I was working with was bought into the content concept that we had. So yeah, I mean, in terms of like the promotion of it, I think that syncing in with other channels, how can those assets or that content be used in email, on social, PRing of it? If you're an SEO agency, I mean, we can talk. I'm sure there's a separate session around digital PR and link building, but that would be a tactic that I would particularly want to use. So yeah, just syncing with other channels and make sure that it goes further, but having a plan. So don't get it live and then go, okay, now we should do this. You've sort of got to know that when you start. You sort of need to know when you're planning out that content exactly when and why you would be promoting that out externally. And I think it was something Miranda said about updating content. So when you're producing content and you're promoting it, think about how in a year's time it could be refreshed again. So if you're using a data source, could you then use that data source in a year's time when it gets refreshed and go again? Like, it's just trying to always know that once content goes live on a website, that it shouldn't just go and die. It should hopefully live on for forever, like my mold piece.
Rebekah, do you want to jump in?
I think he's answered that really well.
Okay. Miranda?
I agree. I mean, content promotion is that's a whole webinar in itself. It needs to be part of the planning process, understanding who you're trying to reach and where are they online? Where do they live online? How are you going to reach them?
So I just want to add one idea, if I may, that I think is a good tip on this. And I think that I've certainly when I've been promoting things at Majestic, if I've got my act together before the post goes out, and actually start arranging the promotion before it goes out, it works so much better. So obviously when Majestic's launching something, the audience is, the people I really want to talk about it are Lee Odden or Barry Schwartz or Lauren Baker, or now next on my list is Miranda Miller on SEJ, but so I have a bunch of people who I do know, and I've spent a lot of time trying to make sure that, well, buying Barry Schwartz drinks doesn't seem to work, but trying to make sure that I know these people well, so that at least they'll take my email. And when I've got a good idea, I don't do it with every post. I really don't do it with every post. But when we've got a product launch, I make sure that I let them know, preferably in advance of the launch. And I actually say, I say, right, what I've done many a time is I'll send them a PDF of the post that's going out and the URL it's going to go out at, and maybe some other material that if they want to write their own stuff about it, then it's fine. They can do that, but they know when I'm going to go live and what we're going to say, and that does tend to work, because usually, I don't know which one of you said it, but one of you said people don't like to hear you talking about yourself. And it's much better if Barry Schwartz talks about my product launch, or somebody in my industry. And it doesn't matter whether you're a roofing person or whatever. If you're a business and you've got something to say, sometimes your blog is not the best place for it to be said. But certainly, if that's going to be the final place for you for the content, letting the people that really are good and good amplifiers of that messaging know about it beforehand, so that they can leak it and get the story and the glory. That's going to be better for you in the long run anyway. So, okay, so right, I've got probably time for one more question. So blind. So informational details of the work. I don't know what that says there. That question's been there since the start. But Jason says, blind 5-year-old. How has Google advanced in deciphering content or contexts from the days of 10 blue links? So I guess that is. That's a hard question if you're the content writers, but I'll put it out there because it's what the customers are asking for. So how does Google is Google understanding it much better than they were before, and how has that changed your writing styles? Miranda, you're nodding, so I'll let you go first. How's that changed the way you've approached the problem?
It's actually, I think that especially for that small producer who is the expert in their field, they don't have a content team, they should feel really good about how Google has evolved, because Google's understanding of how topics are related and how entities are related has become so much better. So you do not have to worry about, your keyword density. I still see people posting, we want a 3% keyword density, like let that go. If you are writing from a position of authority and you're the expert in your field and you're keeping it tightly wound around one topic, that is naturally optimized for the way that Google evaluates content now.
Okay. Rebekah, anything to jump in there?
Yeah, I think the structured data that you can add to post as well, that's another layer of communicating with Google. Things like behind the scenes for images and videos and all those sorts of things as well. I think that's a really great way that Google's producing tools where you can directly talk to them about what your content's about.
Indirectly talk to them, yeah.
About what the content's about. So you can sort of, it also takes away the whole, are you writing for Google or the customer? Because you can do both now, but in two different ways.
Okay. Shaun?
Yeah, both very good answers. I think that, I would say personally that I think that it's much more useful now. I think that the way that Google's sort of search engine results page presents lots of different features, provides people with the information that they need. I guess that's the thing that Google wants, is for people to stay within the search engine and not click through to sites. But I think that, that's something that I think it's something that is in the industry, but there's been lots of studies to say that people still will click through and see people still trust the feature snippet. So I think it's been mentioned a few times already, but the keyword density thing and the keyword thing is a bit of a nonsense. I think just write the best piece of content you possibly can, and Google knows the entities, has been mentioned. So yeah, you will. The best piece of content will generally perform. I think personally, as a user of Google, I find it super useful that it presents me with the right formats at the right times when I need them. So yeah.
The challenge for SEOs and companies is they can't get their head around necessarily, if somebody reads it on Google and never comes to the website, then have I actually got a customer? And it's hard to track at that point as well. And it's hard for content writers then at that point to say, well, I did a really good job of amplifying the message and stuff, because no one's ever clicked through. So it's hard for all of us when Google doesn't.
One of the most recent updates is obviously within the feature snippet. When you click through, it takes you to the text passage itself, which in effect is a really good thing, because it takes the customer right through to the bit that they want. But as a writer, that means that they've missed out potentially on all the bit above it that was super useful to set up that piece. So it's challenging, I think, on both sides. But I do echo what Miranda said about Google's I think actually setting up their algorithms towards great content, and if that's the case and that continues in the future, then that's only a positive thing.
One thing I did with that was I wrote a long piece once, which went through many. So I broke it into many different pages, or I suppose now I should be breaking it into passages. But I could, at the end of each passage, maybe put a link back to the at least to the section header, so that people don't have to can easily get to see it in context. Might be something we should be doing more of.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's the jump back to sections is something that I think should definitely be something we think about a lot more.
Yeah, people have been saying recently that the rel priv and rel next was never used by Google, and we shouldn't be using it. But actually, maybe we absolutely should be now, because we need to get the user to sort of move around the content that now that Google's sending it straight into the individual sort of sections and things. Okay, guys. So we're pretty much at the end of the time. It goes quick, these things. What I'd like to do is just bring in David if he's around, and because we're going to change the format a little bit next time round and find out what we're going to be talking about next time. So just for the audience benefit, where are we going next time, David?
Sure. Next time around, we're going to be broadcasting on the Majestic social media channels. So make sure you're subscribed to the Majestic email list, and we'll let you know exactly where we're going to be broadcasting live.
So we'll be live on YouTube, on Majestic's YouTube channel as well.
On Majestic's YouTube, on Facebook and Twitter as well. So we're going to be broadcasting live at 5 p.m. GMT on the 6th of January. That's 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Fantastic. And guys, and what are we talking about next time? New year.
So next time it's all about strategy. It's all about strategy for 2021. We're only going to be 6 days into the new year. So what are the best ways of sitting down and defining your SEO strategy for the coming year and getting a head start on everyone else?
Fantastic. That's going to be good. Okay, so it leaves me to kind of say goodbye to you guys, but I would love you to just jump in and tell people where they can find out more about you or your organization. If they want you to write some stuff for them, where should they go? So Miranda, why don't you go first?
Sure. So thanks for having me on. That was fantastic.
Oh,
that was like the most fun I've had on a Wednesday afternoon in so long.
Oh, that's very kind of you.
On Twitter and Instagram, you can find me at Miranda LM Writes, on LinkedIn as well, and miranda-miller.com.
Okay, that's great. Shaun, where do we find you? iProspect, obviously, but apart from that?
In Portsmouth, but no, on social, I'm Shaun C Hill, or Shaun Chill, as I've coined it, and on LinkedIn, Shaun Hill, iProspect.com, etc., etc.
So are you chilled or are you stressed?
This session's definitely helped me feel more chilled. So something you guys have rubbed off on my feelings. I definitely was like feeling a little bit stressed today midweek, but this has done me good for the evening.
Oh, good. I'm glad I can help the panelists as well. Rebekah, where can we find you, and how can the audience find you?
My Twitter feed is just at Rebekah Dunne. I'm on LinkedIn, but I very rarely use it, so there's really no point in getting to me on there. For those of you that want to follow my personal writings, I've got a website called RebekahWrites.co.uk. That is not SEO optimized because I wanted it to just be fun, so please don't judge on that aspect. It's just purely about the whole concept of writing for pleasure and that kind of thing.
Okay, and Rebekah's spelled with a K-A-H, right?
Yes.
Rebekah Wright. Is that right with a I-T-E, I'm guessing? Yeah.
No, Rebekah Writes as in I'm writing something.
Yes, yeah. W-R-I-T-E. That's what I mean.
Sorry,
yeah,
yes.
Sorry, yes. Great. Okay,
Yes.
Got it. That's fine. So, David, I think I've done everything I got to do.
Just one other thing I want to mention, actually, is this also is a podcast. And if you want to subscribe to the audio podcast and listen to all the previous episodes, go to the Majestic blog, majestic.com. We are now live on Google Podcasts, on Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So go and listen to the previous episodes.
Go Majestic. Well done. Excellent, guys. Thank you very much for coming in. I really appreciate it. When I press the end button, you guys will get cut off on Zoom. So, I can't stay behind afterwards and say thank you. But honestly, you guys taking out and sharing the information with the audience is really, really helpful to everybody. And I hope you'll stay in. And when we go up on the YouTube blog, post the URL. I'll let you know where it is. It's good. Thanks, guys, and thanks all to the audience for watching as well. See you next month. Cheers. Bye.